Well, hey there, everybody. It's your boy, Mr. Perry, and let's keep things going with Unit 5, Lesson 2. We're going to do a deep dive into constructors. Let's go ahead and get at it. All right, well, way back in Unit 2, we learned that we create objects of a class by calling the constructor in the main method. So here we are in main, and we want to create a new object of the class movie. And so when you break down a line of code like this, when you're in your main method and you're creating an object of the class, let's go ahead and look at each individual part. So the first thing that you need is a data type. Just like we don't really look at the word movie and think of this as a data type, but technically this is the data type. Just like you would say int num equals 0, or boolean is adult equals true. This is the same thing, movie M1. So the first thing we're identifying is the data type for our variable. So this is the variable name, and so M1 is a variable of the data type movie. And then next, of course, we have the equal sign, which is our assignment operator. So we're going to say, all right, well, movie M1 is equal to what happens when we do all of this. So new reserves memory space in our computer, and then movie with all of this is where we're calling the constructor. And so with that, we have our object returned, and it's stored as this reference M1. So now M1 is a reference data type, and it is pointing again to an area in Java memory where all of this data, all of the object data is being stored. So the Avengers 183 PG-13 is being stored, in this memory address over here. And again, M1 is the variable name that points us to that specific spot in memory. So the constructor signature is basically this line that you see right here. It includes the constructor name, which of course has to match the class name, and then parentheses, which may or may not be empty. So here's our class header, public class movie, and then down here, this is our no argument constructor, and this is the constructor signature for it. And again, you can see there's obviously nothing in our parentheses here. Of course, it also might have a parameter list. So what you see here, string t, int rt, and then string r, that's a list of parameters. Formal parameters for our fully parameterized constructor here. So again, just know that you can see it either way. Again, very important that the constructor name must match the class name. That's why anytime I write a class, I always do public class, name of the class, and then skip a few lines and then say public, and then again, name of the class again. Because these two lines are very similar to one another, and you've just got to make sure that you have all of these parts. But yeah, definitely this has to match that, and of course they both have to have that capital letter. Now, why do we have the constructor? Now, the constructor is here to set the state of the object. That's basically what the constructor is designed to do. By state, we mean what values should be assigned to the instance variables. So when you create a class file, up here, you're just declaring the instance variables. You're not initializing them to anything. You don't have them set to anything. There's no equal sign over here. So that's what the constructor is designed to do. Down here, we are passing in 3 arguments to become these parameters, and the parameters that are what will end up becoming the values for our instance variables. So let's go ahead and look at what this would look like. Here we are in our main method, and we have created an object of the movie class, movie M1 equals new movie, the Avengers 283 PG-13. So let's go ahead and look under the hood and see what is actually happening here. So we'll start with the Avengers, right? So down here in the constructor, string t, and then it says title equals t. So what's going to happen here is in main, I pass in the Avengers. The Avengers is passed in as this parameter t, and then down here, this line of code says take this instance variable title and set it equal to t. So the Avengers, again, gets passed in to become our parameter t, and then down here, the value for t is now assigned to our variable, our instance variable title. So that's what happens there. Then we go over to 283. So 283 is our next argument that gets passed in as our parameter RT. And then again, down here, we say runtime equals RT. So that's taking our instance variable runtime, which has been declared up here, and it's just setting it equal to be whatever value gets passed in. And then obviously PG13 would come next. It becomes our parameter R. And then down here we say rating equals R. So again, this instance variable rating is now set to the value of R. Now remember, sometimes we will write a constructor and we will just copy the names of our instance variables. So remember that this will also work. You can say string title into runtime string rating. But if your parameter names for your constructor match your instance variable names, then you have to be sure to use the keyword this in the constructor body. So, obviously title matches title, so you would say this.title equals title. And remember, the keyword this tells Java I'm talking about the instance variable for this particular object. So, this.title lets it know, okay, take this title and set it equal to this title. And then this.runtime says, all right, take the instance variable runtime and set it equal to be runtime that's being passed in. And then finally, this.rating equals rating says, all right, this.rating is up here. Let's go ahead and set that equal to the rating that's being passed in. Just like we saw over here. All right, same concept, same idea, same order. All right, and then a little bit more detail about constructors. So it is possible to have 0 constructors for a class, but if a class contains instance variables, then they will need to be initialized, meaning you're probably going to need to write a constructor. Not all classes have constructors, but 9 times out of 10, when you're writing a class for a class file for this particular class, you're going to have to write at least one constructor, most times more than one. Now, do note though, if you have a program that does not have a constructor defined, Java will automatically provide a no argument constructor that sets all instance variables to their default values. So 0 for the numeric values, false for booleans, and null for strings and object references. You also have the option of writing your own no argument constructor, so you can overwrite the default one that they give you. You've got that option, but it's important to know that if you have a class that does not have a constructor, Java does automatically provide one. And remember that there is such a thing as overloaded constructors. If you write more than one constructor for a class, it is said to be an overloaded constructor. So from our pet class, we did our no argument constructor where we said, this.name equals unknown, this.age equals 0, this.breed equals unknown. But then, of course, we also had our fully parameterized constructor where we actually do have a name, an age, and a breed for the animal. So again, if both of these would appear in the same class file, that means this would be an overloaded constructor. And you could do even more of them if you wanted to. And then finally, we're going to look at an interesting concept. Sometimes you can pass in objects as parameters. It is possible to pass an object as a parameter into a constructor. So for instance, we can look at this person class up here. Public class person. Normally we think of private instance variables as just being your basic data types. So either strings or ints or booleans or doubles. But check this out, private address. So you can see right here, address is capitalized. So that means there must be another class called address that is storing addresses for each person. And so it's just, it's important to put this on your radar that when you're creating a class file, your instance variables can be any, data type, including classes that you've created. So private address means, all right, there's a second class outside of this, person class called address that must contain this. And so if we were to go into main and say, okay, well, you can see right here, address, my address equals new address, and they've passed in the address for Lakeland High School. And now we're creating a person object, person me equals new person, Mr. Perry 47, and then notice I'm passing in my address as the argument here. So as long as you've created the my address object already and passed in your object data, you can actually pass in an object reference as part of the constructor. And so what would happen in that constructor is you would say, your constructor would be public person string, an M for name, int A for address, and then address ADDR lets it know, okay, expect an address. And then name would just be, so our instance variable name would just be set to NM. Our instance variable age would just be set to A. But then our instance variable address, you would go ahead and basically call the constructor that you see here and create that address object. But we're going to do it by calling the get methods for this address object that's being passed in. So in order to complete this, the object that you're seeing here, being instantiated as a part of this person object, you've got to call the, get street, get city, and get state methods on whatever object was passed in. But this will create a new address object called address, and it will now be assigned to this particular object, and there you go. So this is a little bit more fancy, Java operations that we see happening here. I wouldn't say that this is super common, but it's just, I guess, important to put it on your radar that this is possible, and that, you can pass in object references as part of a constructor. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get to our lesson review here. Constructors are used to set the initial state of an object, which includes the initial values for all of your instance variables. When no constructor is written, Java provides a no argument default constructor, and the instance variables are set to their default values. And constructor parameters are local variables to the constructor, and they provide data to initialize all of our instance variables. Okay, with that, guys, we've come to the end of the lesson. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to leave a question or a comment. I'll see you in class.